Welcome to the podcast From Coffee to Cases, the show for small law firm attorneys who want to stop begging for leads and start building a business that runs on referrals and real relationships. Hello, and welcome back to From Coffee to Cases. I'm Delisi Friday, founder of First Call Friday, where I help lawyers build referral systems backed by real data instead of wishful thinking. Today, I'm doing a special episode with Dennis D.M. Meador, CEO of the Legal Podcast Network, who has built his business through digital relationships and modern networking strategies. In this episode, we're talking about why your next referral partner isn't at an event, it's online. Hi, Dennis. Welcome.
Good to be here. I am excited to, we're always like kind of chit-chatting on the LinkedIn. And so now we get to spend some time together on camera and talk about something that we're both passionate about, which is networking, but we just do it from different angles. So I'm excited.
Yes, I'm very excited too. And you and I know each other well, and my audience may not. So we're talking today about digital networking, and you've been building multiple businesses through digital for 20 plus years. So Dennis, can you start by telling us a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I got involved in marketing at 18, 19 years old. Started my first marketing business in my early 20s. That took off, did very well. Used that to kind of semi-retire. And in 2001, I actually for the first time, ran my company remote. I lived in Romania. My company was in the US. I ran my company off of calling cards and dial-up internet for 6 months at a time. But that kind of gave me a taste for, I don't have to be there to do what needs to be done. And most of my career, around 2006, I believe, 2005, I started working with attorneys. I went all in on digital. And I've built basically every business that I've had since then through digital means. It's all been digital types of marketing. But the relationships that I built from scratch in each business have all been started from a place of digital. That's how you and I met, in LinkedIn.
Yeah,
and I saw what you were doing. And I was like, hey, I'm this guy doing this thing that I think you should be a part of. And you were kind of like, sounds kind of cool. Let's talk. And then we met and we started working together. And so I have been digitally networking for like 2 decades now. Almost all my friends, I stay in touch with my family. Everything I do is digital. I mean, I live on an island in Belize right now. I'm not in the epicenter, Austin, that I based my company out of where I lived for a while. I live on an island in Belize. Last year, I traveled 5 months in different places around the world, but yet I was still running my company, developing and building relationships digitally. So that's what I'm excited to talk about today.
That is the dream for many entrepreneurs. And the lawyers listening who own their law firms are entrepreneurs. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, a lot of times lawyers will come to me and they think referral marketing is all networking, and networking is only meeting other lawyers at legal conferences. My first question to you is, when you think of networking and when you think of digital marketing and modern day networking today, what do you think of?
I think that for me, it's a high contact, like you got to do a lot of it. But when you find those people that you vibe with, then you have to be purposeful. And I see some people that are very purposeful, but they don't do the volume of opportunities. And then I see some people that they're very transactional. They're just all about volume. And if you don't buy from them in 2 direct messages, they just move on. Like they're just I don't know, what's something that has a no attention span, like a cat, just kind of like,
Yeah, a
I'm done petting
goldfish.
you. Yeah, goldfish. Like, I'm just on to the next thing. So I think it's a combination of volume combined with then when you find your people, actually then cultivating real relationships.
So can you give me an example of that then? When you're talking about volume, are you talking about volume in just one area in digital networking, or volume in a variety of different ways and platforms?
Both.
Okay.
I have different subsets of different types of relationships according to the actual like outlet. So like, like Facebook, that's where like the old people are. And that's where like I tell my funny stories about me and my wife, or when I was younger with my kids, and like networking that way. And I built some business relationships that way because people just see that side of me. Instagram, I have pretty decent Instagram following. I was one of the first like foodie influencers in Austin, like back in like 2014. And so because of that, I built a lot of friends with like millennials. And so like in Instagram, I have to be very aesthetic and like thinking about, but then I'll put something out and I have all these like friends that I've worked with. Some of them have their own businesses. And again, these are network connections, but I'm connecting with them according to what I call the digital language of the platform. Then I have LinkedIn, which is something I've just started doing like a year and a half ago at most. I've had LinkedIn for 17 years. I jokingly say I think I was the third person to sign up, but because it's like for me it was just like, I guess I'm supposed to have this, I'll leave it there, I won't throw it away, but I did nothing with it. And then I'd be like, oh, maybe it's a job thing, but I don't really need a job, I make my own job, but I'll still keep it. So about a year ago, year and a half, I realized like, okay, people are making business happen on LinkedIn. And so then I
Yeah.
was like, let's jump in. I'm going to still be me. I know this is supposed to be a little bit more of like a professional place, and I don't think that if people had 10 words to describe me, hyper professional would be one of them. I know what I'm doing. I enjoy what I'm doing, but like, I'm very, I try to be very just myself everywhere all the time. And I jumped on. Here we are, almost about a year and a half later. I would say in the 18 months, I built great relationships with individuals like yourself who now have shows, several of them. Um, I I have like 8,000 followers or whatever. I have a lot of great relationships through there, and I feel like I've begun to kind of learn that digital language. And so I think it just depends like where you are, how you market. It's just like if I go to the after party and we're all drinking, I'm going to be a little bit more loose than if I'm, in a session. And I kind of like, in my mind, I segment out each social media place as a different
Yeah.
part of a actual conference. So in my mind, like, that's what I do. And so, yes, you've got to have volume in both, but it's also those connections. You've got to drive deep in the certain places.
You found success before LinkedIn, and LinkedIn was just the fuel to the fire you had already created, which is so interesting to me because one of the things that I teach is how lawyers can use LinkedIn to grow their network, nurture their network, and build the relationships that lead to referrals. You've been able to build relationships and build your digital presence on multiple different platforms. And one of the things I know for sure someone is thinking right now is, that's great, Dennis. I don't have time for all of that. So, for the lawyer who's listening and hearing you say you're on different platforms, what do you say when they are giving the excuse, I don't have time for it?
Then I would say make time for where your clients are above all else. If I'm a consumer facing attorney, and this is just my personal opinion, and this is also based off of a few of like inbox conversations I've had with well-known consumer-facing attorneys. They get the likes, they get the comments, they get the impressions, and I'm like, "How many clients did you get here?" And they're like, I think maybe one last year." And that's no criticism, but it's like if you're fishing with the wrong bait in the wrong pond or whatever, like go to the place that they are. So I would say find the place where your customers are. If I'm an estate planning elder law attorney, I'm spending time on Facebook. That's where
Yes.
I'm networking. If my clients are mostly millennials and mostly, in their 30s and 40s and life plans and maybe divorce stuff and criminal and stuff like, I'm spending time on Instagram. If my clients are in their early to mid 20s, even into their like late teens, I'm spending time on TikTok. So you have to understand that. And here's one of the biggest things I hear from attorneys. Well, I don't have that, so I don't want to do it. And it's like, this isn't about what you want other than you want clients. And if these are your clients, why aren't you hanging out with your clients and building relationships. So I would say
Yeah,
you don't have to do them all, but you should do the ones where your clients are.
1,000%. I love LinkedIn for a variety of different reasons because 1/3 of my business comes from LinkedIn. 1/3 of my business comes from the natural relationships that I've accumulated over 20 plus years in legal. And then the other 1/3 of my business comes from the relationships I have created with my podcast, From Coffee to Cases, here on Legal Podcast Network, and the very intentional guest podcast appearances that I make. And so I think to your point, you have to go where your people are. So for me, I advocate for LinkedIn for any lawyer who wants to meet other lawyers. For lawyers who are saying, Delisi, my referrals aren't from other lawyers, my referrals come from my former clients. Then the example you gave, the estate planning lawyer, perfect example. Your estate planning clients are not on LinkedIn. So maybe you do a little bit on LinkedIn, but you really put a lot more energy into Facebook. Maybe you're trying to meet more more new kids who are younger and probably making mistakes getting DWIs if you do criminal defense. Okay, well, you're probably going to get on TikTok. You're probably going to
Yeah.
get on Threads. You're doing all the places where they are. So I love when you shared, if you can't do it all, focus on the platforms where you know your clients are, because then you're more likely to have success in that area. And so that's some great advice.
Before we move off that, I want to give like a little hot take, little tip.
Yes, yes, do it.
I am what I call platform agnostic because although each platform has a primary demographic, each platform has slivers of every demographic. You know, my daughter, who's 19, or I'm sorry, 20, she'll be on Facebook every now and again. Maybe it is to check on me or whoever else, aunts or uncles in the family. And so, what I encourage is take your content that is targeted to your audience and then use something like a Metricool, a Sprout Social, where all you do is you upload that one piece. You can then just check a box and it can go up to like 10, 12 different outlets. It will disseminate all those for you. And you say, well, why? That's a waste. Well, listen, if with one click of a button you can develop this audience, and all of a sudden over here on Blue Sky, you notice that you've got 2,000 followers and you've just been clicking a button for a year, and you go in there and you start getting like you can with very little time and friction start doing what I call planting seeds in other networks and in other social media outlets with very little of your time. And you don't have to worry about, well, I got to design this post for LinkedIn. I got to design this post for this and this post. No, just go in, put the content out, check your stats every once in a while, and you'll be surprised every once in a while. You'll find an audience you didn't even know you had, and you weren't even making any other effort but one extra click.
You just described what I do, Dennis. So So I love LinkedIn and I get so much business from LinkedIn, but I also know as a new business owner and as a legal marketer, I can't put all my eggs in the LinkedIn basket, or that would make me incredibly naive and put myself in a bad situation where if anything ever happened and I lost that
Yep.
network, that my business would suffer. So I need to be on a variety of different channels. LinkedIn is one of them. But what I do is I create my content for LinkedIn because I write it a certain way and my audience is lawyers.
Right.
Then I tweak it just a little bit and I put it on Instagram and Facebook. I'm still using the same content. I'm just tweaking it just so slightly and still using that same content, but I'm writing it a little different and the tone is a little bit different. And I'm getting the lawyers who are on Instagram who need me to continue to get in their face and say, get on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn, but I haven't converted them yet. And so you can make it easy and do that. Also, with the power of AI,
Yeah,
anyone
that's
can
what I was going
copy
to
and
say.
post. Yes, copy and post your post into Claude and say, "Hey Claude, I wrote this for LinkedIn. Change it up so my audience is blank and it's for Instagram." And then you don't
Yep.
have to recreate the wheel. You can use AI to your advantage that way.
Absolutely. And that's absolutely what I was going to say is now you just upload that LinkedIn and then you say, convert it for Facebook, convert it for this, convert it for this, convert it for this, and then they'll redo it. And it's not AI generated content, it's
Nope.
your content tweaked and edited by AI. So it's still natural, it's still real, it's still you, it's still your voice, it's still you. And again, a great time saving tool that puts you in a position to be successful in marketing across all these different platforms, which again, I like to give this illustration. If you are, like I said, estate planning, let's just say you could go, okay, 32% of Facebook is going to be my audience because of the demographic, the age, the way that's who's primarily active on there. Let's be honest, like certain age demographic, blah, blah, blah. So if 32% is there, and then you go, yeah, but look at this one, it's only 6%, and this one's only 5%, and this one's only 2%, and this one's only 8%. But if you add all of those together, you often end up double, tripling, or even more your opportunities with your ideal client. So instead of going, I'm just going after the one with 32, which by the way, everybody goes after just the one with 32. Now you're one of the few going after the 7% here, the 2% here, the 8% here. You're the only one doing that. And so you actually can drive deeper on these other outlets than and sometimes see more success outside of the one place that you would anticipate seeing the most success when you treat them as one.
I think another example of that, and it's recent, is I saw so many lawyers who were freaking out when we had issues with TikTok because they had put all of their eggs in the TikTok basket and said, oh my God, if TikTok goes away, all of my
Yep.
marketing is on TikTok. My law firm is screwed. That's where I am. And to those
Mm-hmm.
lawyers, I said, sorry, not sorry. You did that to yourself. You should have been on all these other platforms and not reliant on just one. And that's actually one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to turn the corner a bit and say why I'm also a fan of podcasting.
And yeah, I think it's an owned medium, right? So let's
Yes.
talk about podcasting. But here's the other thing
Yes.
about there's so many advantages to podcasting. So like one, it's own media. So you're building your own assets. But two, where else are you going to get somebody, Mr. Lawyer, Miss Lawyer, to sit and listen to you for 20 minutes talk specifically about divorce in Georgia when you have high assets? Like, unless they're sitting in your office. So it gives you the opportunity to have a captive audience that they aren't taking it in unless you just come in and, hello and welcome to the show that's about how great my product is and you should be buying it. Sponsored by me. All right, let's talk about me now. Like, unless you take that approach, you're kind of like, people are sitting there, they're listening to you, they're being entertained, they're liking you, they're trusting you, they're knowing you, all of the things that we talk about, the know, like, trust, process to get clients. The other thing about podcasting is the evergreen effect. Like,
Yes.
if you talk about something that is applicable, but not necessarily just timely. Like, I don't like to get on political podcasts just because in 2 months, even AI stuff, I was doing AI stuff for a little while. I was like, get me on AI podcasts. And then it was just like, by the time you publish an AI podcast 2 weeks later, it's an obsolete thing.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about the law, you're talking about most of the things that any professional that might be listening would be doing. It's going to be good in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So you spend a half hour of your time and it just keeps perpetually working for you. One of the things that we've seen is very easy for us to get a client who had like a YouTube channel with 3 YouTube, videos 2 years ago, or a zombie podcast where they did 3 episodes and then they quit. Because what often happens is we'll come to them and say, have you ever done this? They'll say, yeah, but it was just so much work. And we'll say, anything happened? Actually, we have gotten a couple cases. We just 2 months ago got a case out of, believe it or not. And then we're like, well, hey, we do turnkey. So if you think that, so like that evergreen aspect to it. And then the multiplication of your time. Because when you
Mhm.
shoot a podcast, you're not just shooting podcasts, you're shooting shorts and reels. You're shooting content for your website out of the transcription. You're shooting, audio and video. So you're able to chop it up and use it as website content. Plus, it scales. I think I saw one of your episodes no, it was just your post recently, where a clip from you from one of the shows on the network was a news somehow in the news.
A Google
like,
alert. Yes.
Yeah, but it was on the news section. What I saw was on the news tab, which usually it would just be a new post, but it actually was news. And I was like, wow, what if they were like, Delisi Friday, well, let's see if she's been in the news. And then bing, 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 all your great content and things that you've said. So there's so many layers to what a podcast does. I think most people think a podcast is about gathering your friends, sitting in the garage, grabbing some beers, and talking about whatever strange hobby you have that not a lot of people have. That's not podcasting. Not anymore.
Agreed. I think, to your point, in marketing, we have a phrase, core, create once, recycle everywhere. When you create a podcast, you're creating one piece of content you can recycle everywhere. So the efficiency of podcasting allows you to create that content one time, put it online, put it on your website. The other part is, you mentioned, well, these lawyers are going to create this content and they are going to be talking to their potential new clients. That new client only needs that content when it's relevant to them. So what I love about podcasting is I could do a whole series on why you should, I don't know, prepare your will even when you're in your 30s. What you should be updating 10 years after you've created your will. What are things you should be thinking about as you get into your 50s? You can create certain sections of your content, go deep into it, and then the person who needs your content when they find it goes down this Netflix rabbit hole of your podcast. Because to your point, that content is evergreen and it doesn't matter to them until it matters to them. So when you create that content and you allow them a chance to go deep into the information, now when they call you, they're converting at a much higher rate because they already found all this information and you built this level of trust that only happens when you can see someone's face and hear the tone of their voice. Because the other side of all of this is, yes, you can build great connections through digital networking. But when that digital networking can include audio and it can include video and it can be a podcast, I think that connection is so much more strong and beautiful because now I'm not just a face. I'm not just words. I'm not just content. You're connecting with me because you heard the tone of my voice that I care. You saw the look on my face when I lit up when I talked about referrals. And so I think it's a deeper connection and it's different than just doing a post every day.
Do you know why I actually started this system and this way of podcasting? Because I'll just contextualize it real quick. So the way we do our podcasts, we do them every way possible, but our core thing is what we call authority podcasts. And that is where we provide the host. We have the content plan based on your ideal client profile. We ask 7 to 10 questions. Typically, your episodes are this way. You sit down and you answer. Why? Because I was one, I have spent the last 10 years hearing attorneys say something like this. So, I've worked with attorneys 20 years. So, you could probably, like me, if you're talking to a family lawyer in Atlanta who targets high asset individuals, and they have a firm of 2 partners, 3 associates, you're probably so you're what, $600 an hour, maybe $550, somewhere around there. You could pretty much guess where they're at per hour, and it depends obviously if they're flat fee or retainer based, but you can kind of guess that. Well, about 5, 7, 10-ish years ago, I started hearing things like, I wish I used to be, but anymore, because of how competitive it is, people call and the first thing they ask me is how much it is. And when I tell them what my rate is, they either hang up Or they tell me, well, so-and-so down the road pitched me at this price. If you could do it for this price, then I'm willing to consider. I call that the commoditization of the legal industry. And so I was like thinking, how do I help these attorneys restore authority? Like, how do I get it back to where, like when I was a kid, where parents were like, one day you're so smart, you're going to grow up and you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? Now,
Yes.
80% of junior high kids want to be an influencer. They aren't thinking
Yeah.
about that. So the authority for the position has been sort of lost because of the internet listing them the way they have. So I was like, so how do I get them to? And then I heard this other thing from attorneys, which is, if I get them across the desk for me, I tell you what, 80% conversion every time. Every time, right? So I'm like, okay, so you're awesome in person, but because they're only seeing you online and on your flat website that is a Mr. or Miss Attorney every site, I went to this school, I handle that case, I won a mock trial 28 years ago. Like things that no one cares about, right?
I'm a super
So
lawyer, Dennis.
I'm a super lawyer. It only cost me $2,500 a year to be so. So, so like, I was like, I hear this, that if they're face to face, they can get them. But I hear this, that they're calling in. So how do I bridge that gap? And I'm like, everybody's online, and social media started happening. And then I started thinking, then attorneys started asking me, do you do anything with podcasts? Do you do anything with podcasts? And I was like, well, I mean, I talked to my partner at the time. I was like, no, let's stay off of it. I don't think we can really make it work. But I was like, how could I make podcasting build authority for the attorney? Because I don't think them sitting there asking questions of other people are going to bring them clients.
Yeah.
So what will, and it was positioning them as the centerpiece of the content the way that I do it. So like my whole reason was attorneys saying, I'm not getting paid what I used to. If I could just get them across from the desk, which really hasn't happened since the pandemic. So what we try to do is recreate in a modern way the scenario of sitting across the desk, asking, like you said, granular questions, things that only pertain. I want my boat. I know she's going to get facetious and go after the boat. What can I do to make sure I get the boat in this? And then boom,
Yeah.
I see a clip, and then boom, I see a 15-minute podcast, and boom, that's the person I want because they're going to help me keep my boat. That's what we're trying to create. And that's what podcasting can do.
So let me ask you, because you have now created a legal podcast network that works with a lot of attorneys who are using this and seeing success. So tell me what the difference is between the lawyers who are seeing success doing something like this and the lawyers who don't see success or are scared to try something like this. What is the difference between them?
Well, our clients who see success are really just the ones who show up. Like that's how we design it. Like really the only, and that's our big undertaking, is to get our show up rate. Like 4 months ago, if we had 100 attorneys scheduled to do a podcast with us this week, I want you to guess how many would actually show up. Now, they're paying us. They're paying us. They signed a contract. They want to do it.
60%.
65, very close. We were at 65.
Well, you know why? Because lawyers pay me to hold them accountable. So even though they've already paid me, I have to make sure that they attend their sessions with me and get them back on the calendar when they reschedule, because things happen. Here's the other part of that. I understand if a client comes in, they have an emergency hearing, an emergency situation, that will always trump creating marketing content.
Right.
And I know if you've got a trial coming up, you've got to get everything off your calendar because trial prep is more important. And I respect that. But the other part is showing up and doing the damn thing. Because if you have to reschedule and reschedule and reschedule, but you always push it off and you never actually reschedule and do it, then that's where you're not going to see the success.
Yeah, then you're going to come to the end of the contract and say, well, I didn't shoot anything. Can you just give me my money back? And I'm just like, well, no, I had the staff here. Like, this is how it works. We'll still shoot it, but if you want out and you don't want to keep doing this, that's fine. But what I said 4 months ago, we really have drilled down through our CS and through our production department and step by step and where we're losing. And now we're sitting at like the high 80s, low 90s. Matter of fact, last week, we had a 97 12.5% show rate. No, I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago. Last week we had like 90, 92. So like super happy with my team doing that. What are we doing? What we've said is we're only losing people who don't show up and or
Yeah.
keep putting it off. So let's really work on this, like onboarding, getting them into their session, getting them going, because we know if we can get them, and we explain the process. First 4 months, you're building into the algorithm. You might get a case if you're lucky from your already warm market, but during that second, like month 6, 7, 8, you all of a sudden you'll start hearing from people that you weren't hearing from regardless. And then once you hit that like 8 plus, that's where it just really starts taking off. So we're spending a bunch of time on that front end to get them to just kind of do that. Swinging back to networking digitally. So let's talk about LinkedIn, because I think that we've kind of swung around that a little bit. And I just don't want to talk about podcasting the whole time. It'll
Yeah.
sound like a very self-serving episode. So I'm going
Yeah.
to try
Let's
to
talk about
just get us
LinkedIn.
out of this gear. So LinkedIn has been beautiful. Honestly, like I did the Facebook thing. And listen, you talked about earlier about people with TikTok. I did the Facebook thing, built a big agency, had hundreds of clients, saw the wave, saw it happen, and algorithm doesn't treat people right. It's not fair. I got 800 people to like my page and only 14 saw my last post, and it's just like, guys, you're building on borrowed land. I kind of liken it to this. When I was when I moved in with my dad and my stepmom, there's 4 of us kids, and then they had a kid, and it was a little 2-3 bedroom house. So they built, and my dad remodeled the attic. And then they had another kid, and my dad remodeled the basement. So now instead of a 2-bedroom little apartment for $400, he's got a finished basement, a finished attic, and all of this. Well, guess what the landlord did?
Raise rates.
He raised the rent. And he was just like, I mean, yeah, at
Yeah.
2 bedrooms, like 1 bathroom, it's a $400 a month. But you put in a bathroom, you put in a refinished basement, you've refinished the attic, and my dad couldn't say a thing. He just, we moved to a new place. And yet people build on borrowed land and get upset. And that's why I'm all about ecosystem. You talked about where your clients come from. We do email marketing. I have about 45,000 attorneys in my daily email list. We do cold email marketing. We do every outlet that you can imagine. We're always looking for different ways, different relationships, different things to do in networking and building. And you just don't know what that thing to pop off is. For us, it's been
Yep.
LinkedIn. But if LinkedIn goes away tomorrow, or if LinkedIn goes, every single impression will cost you $10. And they could do that. They
Yeah.
literally could. And only the biggest players would probably be able to afford it or whatever. I don't think that'd be a great idea, but it's just a hypothetical. So if they were to do that tomorrow, sure, there'd be a few people that I might have to kind of find elsewhere, but it wouldn't really set us back for very long or very much. And so I think we need to remember that. But the good thing about LinkedIn, and I think this is where most people miss, for me, the real connections in LinkedIn happen in the inbox.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is what people don't really utilize
I
properly.
agree. Do you know, well, your nickname is DM, right? And so I love that because I will tell lawyers when I have to coach them on using LinkedIn for referrals, you need to professionally slide into the DMs. The reason why that's important is when you post and comment and connect on LinkedIn, those relationships are very superficial. You get to know someone just a little bit, but it's not until you send them that DM and you actually connect with them one-on-one that that relationship turns from superficial to something real. And then you can take that DM further and schedule a time to meet with them in person or on a Zoom or at a conference. And the thing that I love about those DMs is LinkedIn's algorithm also identifies that as like a signal, like, hey, Delisi and Dennis are trying to connect. So I know the LinkedIn algorithm every time I send a DM is now going to push out my content to whoever I'm sending a DM to. So it's not an accident if I send someone a DM and the next time they log into LinkedIn, they see all of the content that I'm putting up. It's very intentional. But I agree, if you aren't using LinkedIn to send DMs and connect with people, then you aren't taking your relationships a step further and making them real. And I create a lot of relationships in the inbox as well. And I agree with you. That's where you can make a lot of money because no one's going to say, "Hey, Delisi, I have a case for you," in the comment section. No,
Right.
they're going to do it in a DM. Go connect in a DM and make it a very real connection instead of something out in public in the comments.
And I kind of liken it to this. So like we traveled around Europe, right? In the fall, we got to go see some places, and like me and my wife are both pretty like outgoing, friendly people. So like we met a couple of couples. We met a lot of people, but there's two particular couples. So one couple we met, we were in Germany. It was before we got to Munich. I forget the name of the city. If I said it, you'd know it. Nuremberg. We're in Nuremberg. So we're in Nuremberg, Germany. We're sitting at an Irish pub, and this couple sits down next to us. They have a dog. We start talking. She's in marketing. He's a punk rock like band, German punk rock band. Like my wife was into pop punk. So like we just like start talking and like we make really good friends. Now, we had a few conversations like that. Sometimes you go, "Well, it's nice to meet you," and you walk off, and it kind of just lingers out there. And
Mm-hmm.
have you ever found yourself being like, "I wish I would have connected with them," right?
Yes. Yes.
So this particular couple, I said, "Hey, you guys want to like connect on LinkedIn?" They're like, "Cool." So we connected on LinkedIn. They've liked our stuff. We've liked their stuff. We kind of stay in contact. And now they're coming over here and they're like, "Hey, we want to come visit you guys." And so now we've made lifelong friends by connecting beyond the superficial. Same thing. We sat across on the train from I think we were going from like Vienna to Salzburg, maybe something like that. And we sat across from a couple. They were originally from India. They had moved to Germany. They spoke English as well. Most people in Europe speak at least 2, 3 languages.
Yes.
And so we start chatting, and then like they have a podcast. So they're talking to me about podcasting. And then like, they travel as a couple. So we're talking about couple traveling, and like we make friends, same thing. Right now we're working on trying to get us be on their travel podcast. And when we go back to have dinner with them, so they can show us the best Indian food of all of Munich, which I don't know if that's something to really brag about or not, but they're willing to show it to us. Right. So like, when you have that person who comments and then you comment and then they comment and then, that happens in 2 or 3 places. You know who Humble Doug something or other is? Do you have
Oh
him
my
on?
God. Yes. I love Humble Doug.
So Humble Doug, he's become my new like LinkedIn buddy. Like
Oh,
he
same.
he starts commenting on my stuff, and I said so. He jokingly calls me the king of humility, and I like always like I jokingly say things like of all my great attributes, humility is probably the best. Things like that. So like my just joking around with him, but like we started slipping in the DMs, and then we found out that like we have a very similar background. We were in a very similar life. He had actually watched some of my podcasts. Like, hey, like you had this, I had this. We actually knew people. Like he went to a college that some people I grew up with went to, a very small like Baptist Bible college. Like all of these like little connections, and all of a sudden I'm like, I guess Humble Doug's my real friend now.
Yes. Yes.
That's what happens.
I love that. I love stories like that because Humble Doug was just a name and a comment. And now Humble Doug's your real friend. And you have so much in common with Humble Doug because you guys actually connected and DM'd each other on LinkedIn. Oh, I love stuff like that. I did a post where I shared something personal. It was a photo of me and my daughter at a theater. Because I wanted to make a conscious effort of going to events with my daughter and spending one-on-one time. And one of the women in the comment section had commented and said, "I do this every year with my mom and my sister. Here's why." And she shared something really personal and really sweet. I sent her a DM and I was like, "Wow, that was beautiful. This is why I do it." And then we started to share very personal things about why those things matter to us in life. We hopped on a Zoom and I loved meeting with her. Now she wasn't just a name anymore. Like we had a real
Mhm.
connection. I knew what her background was. I knew how she became a lawyer. And everything was so much more than just a name on a screen. And I think that's where digital marketing, digital networking can then turn into real relationships, but you have to take that extra step to make it real.
You do. I mean, let's go to like my team. I have a guy on my team, Randy. We have literally worked together 20 years. He is the person that recruited me into legal digital marketing. He is a salesperson. We've worked off and on for 20 years. Ben, I've known for 7, 8 years, my other sales guy. Tracy and like Randy, I've seen one time in my life. We had pool together. We played pool together once in 20 years. Ben, we worked together, but we were like in the same social, but we didn't really hang out together. I've got Tracy Murda. She's one of content. She's kind of my Swiss Army knife. Tracy, I've known for 8 or 9 years. The guy who's the director of my fulfillment, I've known for 7 or 8 years. Almost the vast majority of my core people that came in the first year were people that I had known for 3, 5, 10, 20 years that literally were just like, oh, you're doing your own thing again. Hey, let's work together. Like, and so these are all relationships that literally I've not met them. I've not but like we're in each other's lives.
Yes.
We talk, we text, we DM, we do all these things. So if it weren't for that social capital, and listen, I didn't do the relationships I had with them so that someday they could make me money on my company, right? Like it
Yes,
was just me being
exactly.
me.
Mm-hmm.
But like the social capital is probably 70% of the reason why my company has accelerated the way that it has. And the fact that I know how to build social capital in a digital way is probably the reason why we have grown and with our client base, and we have like a ton of you refer people. We have some agencies that have referred in the last year 20 plus clients, a couple of agencies, just people that I connected with on here. Then I showed them what we were doing, and then they're like, yeah, I'll work with you. And then they're like, hey, I want to bring my clients to do this. One company closed their podcast product and said, we don't need this, we have you, we're going to just bring all our customers to you. All because I got on LinkedIn, I posted some silly stuff, a picture of me, like, I don't know if you said the other day, in flip flops. Sometimes my tattoos hanging out, my beard. Like, I don't care. That's who I am.
That's
Like, I'm
the
not
real
trying to
Dennis
hide
I
it.
know.
Yeah, but people are just like, hey, yeah, no, this sounds great. Oh, or an attorney. Literally, this happens probably 2, 3 times a week. Attorneys following my content. Sometimes they get my daily newsletter, and so that's why. But they'll say, "Hey, I've been following you for a while. How does this thing work? I want a show." And like, how do you like? That's the easiest sale in the world. And my two guys, I asked them. I said, "Guys, what have you noticed over the last year?" Because now they've both been selling about 2 years, and they said it used to be we spent most of the time trying to convince people they should do this. Now we spend most of the time showing people what they're about to do. And that
Yes.
is because of networking at scale and then networking individually. And that's what, like, to me, like, especially LinkedIn I don't see it as marketing. I see it as networking at scale. And I
Yeah.
just try to 100% be myself. Yeah, I put a little bit of, and I can help you with a podcast in there, right? But at the end of the day, I'm just like, hey, this is me. This is what I think. This is how business is. This is da da da. Like, hey, like if it helps you, great. If it made you smile, if it gave you a little bit of inspiration, great. And then when people slide in or when we start conversing in the comments, then I slide into theirs and then we're like, hey, and then I'll be like, you thought about a podcast? They're like, actually, I have. And I want to talk to you about that. So it's a natural progression because, again, the thing I like about LinkedIn, like with, with, with like Instagram and that sort of stuff, it's a little more awkward of a transition from, hey, we're vibing to, hey, you want to give me some money?
Yeah.
Whereas like LinkedIn is more natural to be like, hey, we're kind of cool vibing and you do this. Okay, let's talk about it. Like that's what
Agreed.
I've noticed.
Well, because it's a profession. Look, they're all social media platforms. But
Right.
the difference on LinkedIn is you're there for professional reasons. We're there to talk about work. You're going to sprinkle in some personal things about you so people get to know you on a personal level. You want them to know, like, and trust you, but it's not always going to be professional. And you sprinkle in the little bits that are going to get them to know, oh, Delisi has a daughter. Oh, Delisi's dad is a lawyer. That's how she became the way she is. Oh, Delisi's favorite color is pink. But when you do
Delisi
that
was Miss
enough,
Latin USA.
I was Miss Latino World, yes. And so,
Sorry, world. Oh, world. I
we're
apologize.
gonna do it, Dennis. Let's get the title right.
I got you. I got you.
But that's how you know, right? Because I post about it. And so just to kind of bring the conversation full circle, you have to put the content out there in order for people to find it. And the beauty of it is there are a variety of places for you to go to do that. How you decide to do that and where you decide to do that is up to the attorney. But there are a lot of different places you can do that. You can use a podcast to get it on a variety of different places as well. You can use that podcast content to share it on socials too, but you have to put the content out there in order for people to get to know you. And you can educate them enough that when they do call you, they feel like they already know you, like you, and trust you to a point where they convert at a much higher rate. And now your sales team, if you have one, or your intake team, if you have one, isn't trying to educate them on that call anymore. Your digital networking and the things you've put on social have already educated them for you. And in my mind, that makes you a much more efficient marketer. It helps you convert those phone calls at a much higher rate. And that is a more efficient attorney getting their name out there and doing it in a way where they don't have to do everything all the time. They can let some of that evergreen content do the work for them and just make that content one time.
Absolutely. And I think, I was kind of thinking about the arc of the conversation. And I think a little like because we could talk about like networking, digital networking, but then also finally the answer to what it means to be authentic. Because everyone's told to be authentic. I'd like to hope, based on our discussion of how we've talked about we've been doing social media, is kind of like a primer. I wouldn't say it's the be all end all, every single part of it, but I think it's a good primer for people to start understanding when us marketers say be authentic. What does that mean? It just means literally like be yourself, have conversations, be vulnerable, tell stories, like, keep it tied in, keep it professional. But I think would you say a fair assessment that that's a little sub title of this discussion?
Oh, absolutely. And I agree with what you just said. It's not all digital networking because you should do in-person networking as well. But the digital networking you do is your foundation. So when you meet someone in person, that connection feels very real. Because I can't tell you how many times I've met someone in person and they said, "Oh, I listen to your podcast. I listen to
Yep.
every single episode. I love it. Oh, I love following you on LinkedIn. And this is a person I just met." And
Yep.
so it's that foundation that helps you create those relationships. It's not the end all be all because you should still be meeting people in person, but it certainly helps you spread the word and be a much more efficient marketer.
Absolutely. Well, I think that, unless you want to live on an island and not have to meet anybody and just build businesses and then,
You
whatever.
can still do that. You can do that, Dennis, but just get out there every once in a while and go to an event and
Hey,
shake
I
some
did go to
hands.
Podfest earlier this year. My goal is every year to do 3 events. I won't be able to this year because of my wife having the baby, but next year I'll get I am doing an event next week, but it's with business owners, not to cultivate business. So I do a little bit of like in real world stuff, but no, I just said that facetiously just to kind of like poke at you because I know you're Miss in person and I'm like Mr. like live on an island, leave me alone and let me just talk through a
I want to
microphone.
do it all. Hey, they say the more hands you shake, the more money you make. I want to keep going out there and shaking hands.
And a lot of marketers, a lot of people are saying analog is really where it's going to move because digital is there will come an exhaustion point for people trying to determine. That's why I'm trying to like experiment with things to like signal that I'm a real person on this podcast. I put out a stat where my team did like 54% of podcasts that were released last month were AI generated. So that means 45% were only 45% were real people actually doing the podcast. So that gives us a chance to stand out even more, because they're going to be like, oh, wow, this is real people. Like, it's not, the tonality, the silliness, they're just like, yeah, no robot's going to act as dumb as this guy. So maybe that's sort of my shtick.
Well, I did not know that stat, but you know what? That just means those of us who are doing it for real are going to stand out that much more. And I agree with you
Absolutely.
on analog marketing. If anyone's watching the video, right behind me is Jay Ruane's book, Analog Marketing in a Digital World. It's why my top 3 podcasts on From Coffee to Cases are the 3 podcasts where I talk about gifting. Gifting for relationships is the biggest topic that lawyers love to hear on my episodes. And so it just tells you that we are trying to remember and create relationships based on real moments and connection that doesn't always have to be in person. It can be as simple as sending someone a gift. And so I think being real and authentic is going to be something that doesn't go out of style. I think we're going to make it come back, and we will stand out from the people who are all doing AI content.
Oh, absolutely. I already see a few people that used to work with me, and then I'll do and then they're doing their AI content, and I'm just like, you keep doing it. I'll see you in 6 months.
I
So
don't think that's how you build trust. I want
no,
to
you
build
don't.
trust with a person, not a
Yeah.
bot.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, founder-led marketing came out of the fact that people weren't relating to logos. So why do we think that they're going to relate to likenesses of people? When people find real people, and when people are bold enough to be real people, they're going to be very successful in this next wave. But on top of that, there will be many who will just go, okay, I'm not finding the connection online anymore because it's bots. I need, what's going on in my neighborhood? What's going on? Let me go to this event. So I really appreciate you having me on. I think that us both kind of being the marketers from the two perspectives of like, hey, I'm Mr. Just try to be in the inbox and post, and let me just like run all around the world while I'm doing it. And you're just like, no, I'm going to run around conference to conference, schlep hands, slap backs, kiss babies. And at the end of the day, we're both still in a good place. So
Agreed. Agreed. Well, thank you so much, Dennis. I really appreciate your time. That is it for today's episode of From Coffee to Cases. If you want to learn more about how to turn your network into a consistent stream of referrals, visit firstcallfriday.com. And if you're interested in building authority and relationships through your own podcast, you can learn more about Dennis DM Meador and his work at thelegalpodcastnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a review so more lawyers can learn how to build a network that actually works. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a peer who can also benefit from case referrals. For more information or to connect with me, Delisi Friday, visit firstcallfriday.com.